Good evening. I'll call the February 24th Cedar Springs Public School Board meeting to order. It is now 6:15. Welcome to the meeting in the public, not with the public, but we're most glad to have everybody here. So if we could all rise together for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and if we can have a roll call, please, Secretary Slager.
Yes. Trustee Bowser.
Here.
Trustee Patton.
Here.
Trustee Lund.
Here.
Treasurer Gilmore.
Here.
Secretary Slager. Here. Vice President Schaffner.
Here.
President Reed.
Here. Thank you, and we've established a full forum for this evening's meeting. That brings us to the adoption of the agenda, and I will entertain a motion for as presented.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda. I'd like to make a motion that for providing snacks by the teachers in elementary school up for discussion. And I'd also like to request an investigation under the violation of board policy PO 1230, item K and an N.
Thank you. That's for addition.
I'd like to add that to the agenda for discussion.
We have a second for that amendment for adding things to the agenda.
Support.
Support for adding to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. All items? Or one?
Can I repeat that one more time?
The snacks provided by the teachers for the elementary school and the request for investigation for the violation from the superintendent under board policy PO 1230, item K and N.
That motion, so if I second that motion, then we have discussion.
Are you asking discussion on what he's requesting? So we're gonna, if you do second, then we'll have regular state discussion and we can talk about those pieces. If it does pass, then those get put on the agenda for what he's requesting. Cool. So, yes.
We're gonna vote, or we're gonna have a discussion.
Did you second it? So we would also for discussion.
I open up for discussion for adding 2 items to the adopted agenda, and I would caution on one of them. It could be a point of order for contractual issues. So I would open the board up for discussion.
So question, if both of those items are added to the agenda, would one of them be taken into closed session, or would they all be discussed in open session? Because of the potential contract issue.
Two very different issues.
Right. So the first item about the adding the snacks and things, that's on an action item that's already on the agenda.
That wasn't discussed prior to the meeting.
Well, it's not up for action. So
That's why
that's
I'm asking for it to be up for discussion.
Right.
I've asked if we could add that to the agenda, and I did not get a response back from the board. So procedurally, what are you asking? For a discussion,
Right.
for us to look into these 2 items.
Only the second item again regarding the superintendent.
That he violated board policy PO 1230, item K and N.
So that's the discussion for us. So does anyone have any other So I would call then that the agenda items be added.
Well, before you do that,
Yeah.
just under discussion, you said the snacks was already on the agenda, which section is that?
I misspoke. I thought that was in a handbook issue.
Okay,
That was my miss.
okay, all right.
I think it makes sense to vote on them separately. It's added items.
Okay.
So we'd have to turn down 1, 3, yeah.
I would call for a vote. And then if it passes, they're on there, if not, we can redo.
I can make something separately.
It's already on the table,
Yep.
So you think.
So it's on the table.
so call for a vote.
So I'm going to call for a vote for adding those agenda items as requested by Vice President Schopner,
No,
Secretary Slager,
No,
Treasurer Gilmore,
no,
Trustee Lund,
Yes,
Trustee Patton, no. Trustee Bowser,
no,
President Reed, no. So we'll move on to. Well, we're gonna stay as, a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
To just point of clarification, I do think we kind of messed that up a little bit because we had already a motion on the table. This was amendments.
All right,
The amendments was knocked down. And because of that, our original motion still stands. So if we have additional discussion on it, now would be the time for it.
thank you, for that clarification. Any other discussion for the motion for the adoption as presented?
like I said, I'd like to, I think it was a reasonable list. I move to add the conversation around snacks and get an update on where we're at. That's the agenda, I think, that's okay. So I move that we do that, and we add the snack discussion to the agenda.
I'll second.
So we're gonna treat that as another amendment. So I'll call for that vote and then go back to the full agenda. Great. All right, Vice President Schopner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes,
Trustee Lund,
Yes,
Trustee Patton,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes. So we're going to add snacks to UFG item number H. Okay. Got that. Now we're back to the agenda as presented with an agenda item H. And
Call for a vote.
Vice President Schopner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
yes,
Trustee Lund.
Yeah.
Trustee Patton,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser.
Yes.
President Reed, yes, motion carries. Okay. Now, this is part with our agenda. All right, we have gratitude, so we open up the table.
My gratitude would be our sports, girls basketball, cheerleading, I mean, absolutely phenomenal. So that was exciting to see all of that.
Yeah, the girls are doing really good. Middle school wrestling also took first in the conference. I'm so grateful for that.
Mhm.
I'd like to give a shout out to just all the volunteers that come alongside, and a lot of them are parents, but just it takes a community, and we are doing that, and I'm very grateful. So all the volunteers, thank you.
I'm grateful for the members of the administrative team who are here tonight to share the middle of the year data update with the board. So you'll see what progress that we made. They'll highlight some of those points of progress, but also identifying things that they're going to continue to work on in the classroom and the buildings over the next few months as we work towards the end of the school year. I'm also grateful for fall. Continued progress on our construction projects, which will help us stay on track and be ready to open beach for the fall of 2025.
Thank you. And thank you for all the administrators, everybody for the data that's taking this night away from your games. We appreciate that. That's by you. All right, moving on to our consent items, the general business for the board. I would entertain a motion for as presented.
Support, or so moved.
Support. Vice President Schaffner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Lund,
Yeah.
Trustee Patton,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes, motion carries. That brings us to the work session portion of our meeting with the mid-year data review with Scott Smith and Timmy.
Yeah, so thank you. So tonight we're gonna break the data up into two groups. The first group will be our elementary data. And then the second data set, conversation we'll have will focus on secondary data. So if I could have, Kristen Alberts, the district's, grant and continuous improvement specialist come up to the podium, as well as our elementary team, if they can come up to the podium as well. Kristen will give you an overview of the different assessments that you're looking at. Then she'll transition in and give you an overview of the data, the early data points that we're getting from our early childhood preschool classrooms, which are predominantly our GSRP classrooms. And then we'll transition in. Scott Carpenter will share insight over the trails. Jen Cook is here to share beach, and then Sam Becker is here to give an overview of the data coming out from Cedar View. Clarence McCoy is also here. They'll be open to any questions that you have regarding the information that's important.
Hello, oh, sorry. Hello, oh, it is, thank you. I'm Kristen Albert. I am the Grants and Continuous Improvement Specialist. And we are going to present on the elementary school data. The data points for elementary are a little different than secondary, just because there are some early literacy components and early math components we track, as well as that bigger iReady assessment. That puts all of those skills combined as we move through the year. So in elementary, or starting for preschool, we have an Acadians, as well as in K-5, we also track with Acadians, which is our early literacy screener. We have iReady reading. We have a universal screener for number sense for math, as well as the iReady math assessment. So that's the overview of elementary as a whole. For the Peli assessment, I'm guessing that you have it open on your, I was expecting to see it on the screen. I know what it looks like, but I'm guessing, no, that's okay. I wasn't sure if you guys had access to it. I didn't want to move ahead. All right, the Peli, the first score there is the composite score. The composite combines all the 4 at the bottom into one score in a summary. So that's that overall view of the students combined. The one after the composite is the language index. The language index includes the oral language score as well as comprehension combined. So those two are those overview assessments to track students with those combined scores. The scores at the bottom are the oral language, comprehension, phonological awareness, and alphabetical knowledge. Those are those early literacy assessments that we can track individually, so we can target those skills in the classroom. And then they also do the early math inventory. We're trending in the right direction with all of those indicators. It's really, the teachers have cognizantly put effort into phonological awareness and the alphabetic knowledge. Those are those letters and sound knowledge. The vocabulary and oral language and comprehension. They also intentionally align activities to make it a language-rich environment, which is an early literacy skill. And we will continue to do that as we move forward throughout the year in our preschool classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on early childhood?
Just a comment, it definitely looks like we're going in the right direction. So, awesome.
Team Phonics is wonderful.
All right, Sam Becker from Cedar View. I don't know if I need the microphone. We kind of, in our continual, like we're trying to continuously be aligned to K-5. So we kind of took it how we've done previous ones, where I'm gonna focus on behavior for all three buildings, then Jen's gonna talk math, and Scott's gonna talk reading. So this is really the focus one, the office managed referrals, per day. Last time we were here, it was all up in here, and we were trying to explain that away, but we've made progress. Everybody's trending down, but we've all three buildings done it different ways. At Trails, they really had more focused support of their PBIS interventionists to work kind of with the teachers, and have teacher like build ownership and relationships with those students. So they're working together to help, I call fight the spike, which you see those spikes up there. At Beach, they looked during those fall months, looked back, identified their high behavior flyers. They updated and adjusted those behavior plans. And then with kind of what I call those fence sitters who are, they don't know what they want to be. They really focus on some check in, check out for them. And then at Cedar View, we noticed our data for especially October, November were classroom disruptions. So we wanted to focus on lessening classroom disruptions. So we pushed into classrooms more with our PBIS intervention team, and myself, as opposed to being reactive. So that's kind of the three different, very similar in terms of the data, how it's trending down, but different ways in how we utilize our behavior teams. Any questions? All right.
Okay, I'm gonna focus on math, for kindergarten through 5th grade. When you're looking through all the slides, there's lots of different information there. Some of the things that we want to celebrate, is there was in the universal number screener, there was a decrease of students who were in the red, from beginning of the year to middle of the year. We also saw a decrease of our red students in iReady for math as well. We saw an increase of our students who were in the green in iReady. So we were super excited about that. One of the things that we noticed from the slide that has the 2023-24 to 24-25 universal number screener, that one, are well below and are below basic are those numbers. So that red and orange are decreasing. Thank you, Dana. Also, if you look from 1st grade through 5th grade on the middle of the year, iReady, 60% where it shows how many were proficient. Nope. Nope. Keep going. Keep going. One more. Nope. The slide that looks like that. There you go. Yep. So on that slide, our 1st through 5th grade students, for the middle of the year, iReady, 60% or above of students were on track to make the progress of growth for the year. So we were really excited about that. Some of the things that we have had discussions about K-5 is looking at the middle of the year number screener. There are some things that come into play with that because sometimes you'll see it decrease. And so we really wanted to analyze why. Why is it decreasing? And some of the things that we've noticed as we were going through the screener and looking at each item across the grade levels, that the time of year that was given, some instruction hadn't happened yet. So some of those students were tested on things that they had been not instructed on yet. So we are being mindful moving forward that we are looking at that and making sure we're hitting those points in the future. We also, in the middle of the year, there is a big change. At the beginning of the year, it's all verbal. So it's asking them a question like start at 65 and count up. And they're doing that just one-on-one with someone. The middle of the year, they're adding a written component to it. And it's multi-step story problems, which is really hard for students to adjust to that. So we're being more mindful of making sure we're practicing those more often before the end of the year so the kids feel more comfortable moving forward. Okay, there's our math.
Good evening, everybody. So I am looking at the reading K-5, and one of the things as a reminder that iReady looks at is a predictor of M-step. So when our eyes look at this graph, we are actually excited to look at the back end of the graph for each of the beginning to the mid-year K-5, our reds decreased in all grade levels. So those kids are moving.
Sam, that's Matt. You want to read?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Just make sure you're paying attention.
Number 7.
We're still moving.
Number 7.
I didn't even look at the title. I just went right to the, because I knew what I was supposed to talk about. There we go. So looking at reading, see? It takes, that's a good skill to look at the title. So beginning of the year to mid-year, we are dropping consistently on the back end of that for iReady. Okay, so that's very exciting. We see a lot of green with the third grade mid-year, 60% at or above grade level for beach. So there are some wonderful celebrations. Kindergarten jumping from 24 to 64% from beginning to mid-year. So wonderful celebrations to draw attention to. And if we look at the reading growth on Acadians, this time I'll make sure I'm looking at the right one. I'm not helping. Yeah. This is the one I'm missing. Yep, reading growth. So again, these graphs show us who has maintained at or above benchmark. So we look at a K-5 continuum. We are 83 to 87% of our students were maintaining that at or above benchmark, which really speaks to the work that our teachers are doing in the classrooms during their win time, which is our intervention time. So they are being intentional and strategic with the activities and the programs that the kids are working on to help maintain that growth. That's been a big focus this year, K-5. And then if we look at the K-3, so we're going to look at the Acadians. There we go. Takes a team. So as we look at, we're also looking at the back end as well. And we see that K-3, 50% of our students are at or above and have continued to maintain. One of the points of emphasis that our teachers and our interventionists are working on is these are not just percentages, but those are students, those are our students, those are faces in our classroom. Our teachers and interventionists take that to heart. They really, really have been working hard on collaborating. They're working hard on being intentional in their win times, and the interventionists with the assistance of Kristen have been working extremely hard on focused intervention tools to really target those students in that tier 2 intervention. So we have a lot of celebrations to talk about. That doesn't mean that we're ignoring the work that has to be done, that we will continue to work with our staff for the rest of the year, but our teachers are working super hard. Interventionists have been just a wonderful addition to our day, and the collaboration that they have between them has been very, very inspiring. So a lot of celebrations, a lot of work to do, and we will continue that work again tomorrow. Any questions on any of the reading?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How is the intervention, is the resources per student still okay, or do you stretch thin, or?
Yes, we're using 95% group as an intervention tool as well, and they have those kits that they need to get the work done.
Is you're saying amount of kids per, like, staffing wise?
Yeah.
Oh, staffing wise, so at Trails we have 6 interventionists for academic interventionists, and that has been a blessing. It's been a great addition to the building. And
We have the same. We have 6.
And we have 4, but it's a consistent 4, which last year was like one took another job, so we're down to 3. So I think it's been consistent across the board, which is really been very helpful.
I do have one question too. If you go up one slide, I just want to make sure I'm looking at it correctly. You got some percentages that are over 100%. Is that just a state of the data, or is that percentage of kids that are at growth rate? It looks like or do we have maybe some kids transfer out, or do those count some of the kids that come in from out of the district, or?
No, a kid can be part of both of these. So a kid can be part of improving placement and progress towards annual growth.
Yeah, if you look at fourth and fifth, we've got two columns that are over 100% by themselves.
That means they made above
Yes.
the annual growth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so instead of a
And-
year's worth of growth, they've gone above and beyond that.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Hey, Clarence, do you have anything to share?
Not really, but, in the interest of time, I would just concur with Sam that those behavior data trend lines are, indicating that they're trending in a positive decision, but that does not mean that we're out of the woods. We have to continue to strengthen those interventions, continue to strengthen those parent-teacher relationships and expound on those. That's where the rubber meets the road, to continue to advocate that young people, have decisions made based on data, that they graduate from these interventions, that they not get stuck in an intervention, that they continue to look at what's best for them to help them continue to grow and to be able to align through buildings, processes where we're defining behavior, not just in general terms, but in objective, measurable terms, so we can know whether interventions are effective and how we continue to improve and get better and activate those data routines to improve our decision-making for the best outcomes for our young people. Yeah.
One question, I know we talked about it. This is really good news to watch it come down. Just a question. So we see month over month that it's dropping. If we compare this time of the year to this time of the year, you know, in previous years, I think we talked at one of the previous work sessions that we're trending down really since the 2019 or 2020 when we were kind of maybe at the peak. Have we continued to experience those year-over-year improvements?
I think we are. I think as teams get better, we get better at affecting these interventions earlier. And the good news is that now that the elementary schools are working together more efficiently, I am very optimistic that I think it's logical that most of our efforts, not all, but most of our efforts are put at trails, because I think that's where we get the most bang for the buck. When we invest in those young people and have consistent routines, it's less anxiety. They're able to transition from school to school to school. And I think as we get better at CPI, managing, you know, those really extremely difficult young people, as we get better at co-parenting, which is really challenging, meaning we all speak with the same voice, myself, principals, teachers, and parents. Those young people have a more consistent message, and they fall into the system. And I think that's a great observation, and we're really hopeful about that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's such a good news when we talked about it last time. Since we're continuing to see them drop month over month, I assume we're continuing to see year over year, but I thought I would.
It's very exciting.
And I will say too, when we come back here, you'll see spikes again, because it ramps up. We're seeing it. But it'll spike the spike again, so.
Yeah, and I would also just add in regards to that is that that's what this data helps us do, that it activates those processes where we can start to proactively manage student behavior. We know spring is coming, so we can address those things.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Coming to you from the middle school. I think we're starting out with math as the first end of our slides, right? When we get there.
Number 14.
There we are. All right, so you will see our math data is also trending in the right direction. However, our growth moves are a little smaller than what you might have seen in the K-5 world. I will say it excites us because to hear the goodness in the K-5 world coming to us means there are fewer gaps coming our way. So one of the challenges at the middle level is we see students come in and they've decided, or they start to decide in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I'm a math person or I'm not. And we're battling that because we're all math people. It's just a matter of where your strengths lie. And so we battle that mindset a little bit. But you can see that our at or above grade levels, they have increased. We've seen growth. We see the red decreasing. And something to just share that we're focusing on moving into next year that we're all pretty geeked about, I think, is we're looking at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We're going to offer one math class for our students that will hopefully close the gap. So our general ed students who need some serious direct instruction with their support and their buy-in and their parent buy-in, that will be a specific class with them. They will be working through 6th grade math instruction, 7th and 8th, the actual curriculum. We're not modifying that by any means, but it will just work at the pace and fill some direct gaps that they need. So we're excited about that. Also this year, something that we've put into play has been in 6th grade, we have something called Student Focus, which is kind of a career or future focus minded class that all of our students do. And now we have teachers also building an IXL, which is like a curricular supplement that even if you're not the math teacher, you're able to support or supplement some of that in kind of a homeroom kind of mentality. So that's a great opportunity. In 7th grade, we have one teacher has 2 hours back-to-back of co-taught instruction with 2 certified teachers in the room. And then our other 7th grade teacher is now teaching 5 classes co-taught with an interventionist there. So we're excited for that. And then 8th grade, we also run 2 learning lab classes where it's more targeted to their needs. So instead of just speaking to the numbers, I want to just address, we see there are gaps and we know it. And those are the things we're trying to put into play to minimize those gaps a little bit. So what questions do you have? All right, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to talk about our reading data.
Sounds good.
So I was very excited about our reading data that we have at the middle school mid-year. Our teachers have been working really hard collectively as a whole to read and write across all subject areas and to use common methods and routines in order to do that. So as a group, they've really owned the data, not just in our language arts classes, but in our science classes, social studies, and even math using vocab and reading strategies. We have an MTSS literacy team, and we made a goal. When this data breaks down, it's in 5 different categories. One of the categories is comprehension of informational text. And that often is the most important for our middle schoolers. And so we set some goals around that specifically. And you can't see it on this graph, but in the graph where the data is broken down, we have already met that goal mid-year. You want to go to that next slide, Shelley? So this is just very exciting to me. Typically mid-year, we would expect to see 50% progress to annual growth. The fact that we're already at 100% in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade shows me that our students are working really, really hard on these reading skills, and so are our teachers. We've also taken a lot of time in our professional development to look at our iReady data at the beginning of the year when we first got the results, and we looked at the students' M-STEP data from the year before. Those have a lot of the same patterns, and so we were able to use even more data to address some of our student needs that we're seeing in the classroom. Any questions about reading data?
All right. Well, we also fight this fight sometimes with behaviors. For us, we find that some of our toughest months or weeks are as we're headed into break or any sort of change in the regular pattern is coming. Multiple snow days, things like that impact our middle school world and minds. November was higher there, you'll see at the middle school. but we saw that drop off pretty decently in December. And I think if we were to pull January and February, we're probably pretty comparable to that. Again, these are referrals only on the majors, like the major things that kind of hit. Not necessarily every little disruption or every scuffle in a forced play or something in the hallway. If we reported all of those, we'd be here a bit, right? They're kids and can get a little squirrely in our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade times, but we've seen that taper off and it feels good. We've also spent a lot of time recently with our staff discussing the consistency of our protocols there and how we need to consistently across the board be logging those things to show where we're at and how we're growing. So, and then as far as attendance, it's just kind of overview. We currently have 81% of our students at the 90% or more mark, which means in a school year, we're looking for ideally students to miss less than 10%. So we have about 180, 182 days a year. In a year, 10% would be 18 days. That's a lot. I mean, nearly a month really of school becomes your 18 to 20 day mark. So right now we have 81% of our students that are 90% or above attendance. So that is something we are keying in on, we are focusing on, but we also recognize that some of our students show up late to school and it's not always their fault, right? A 6th, 7th, 8th grader isn't responsible for driving themselves. And sometimes they can be stubborn and not roll out of bed. I've lived with 4 teenage girls and that happens, right? But we try to be mindful of that with our students to not, man, what'd you do? You were up late again? No, like instead, hey, we're glad you're here. Good morning. It's 8:02. We're in first hour. Let's go. So that's been a focus for us.
Any questions?
Question.
Right, thank you.
Thank you guys at Normal School. It can be very fun. We'll say, so thank you for your efforts. It's like everything's kind of in the direction, so thank you.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Lots of opportunity for growth, right? Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Before I dig into the high school data, Mr. McCoy said in his wisdom that there's a lot of co-parenting happening at the elementary levels among building leaders. I think we have the same thing happening with our middle school and high school, and all that credit goes to Mrs. Mack. She's been holding me accountable on that as we've been getting together more often to just talk about our data and our next steps and our vision for our building. So here on this screen, this is our attendance data for the high school and for New Beginnings. I mean, it speaks to itself. Mrs. Alvarez and Ms. Mack talked about, sometimes it's not those middle schoolers' faults if they don't get to class or get to school on time. For our high schoolers, there's less of that excuse or that alibi, and 82% just isn't good enough. And I'm going to talk a little bit as we get into this deeper how we're trying to address that, but 82% is just not going to cut it for us, and even lower for our New Beginnings kids. So, oh man. Okay, same data plot you saw from my middle school teammates. Say this almost verbatim to what Mrs. A and Mrs. Mack talked about, just starting to trend down. These are the majors. We've seen some improvements there. I'm going to explain why in a little bit. This is the same attendance data you saw before. I'm going to drill down into this. If you look, this is hard to see, but we have seen, at least trend-wise, over the last few years, we have seen a decrease in average referrals per day. And I'll explain to you shortly why we feel like that's happening. This is what I consider to be the best behavioral threat assessment program in the state. In fact, if you didn't know, I'll say it. Mrs. Voskel gets asked to go to major conferences. Last year, she presented to a group of about 700 principals on our threat assessment protocol. coming from a high performing district, which I came from, we didn't have anything that even could touch what we do in terms of threat assessment here at Cedar Springs schools. And it's a real credit to her and her team for what they do for us. In our building, you can see how many stats we've had. We're actually on pace to have more than what we've had in prior years. But one thing that Mrs. V always talks about is you really have no idea or way of quantifying the violence that you prevent, right? We really don't know how many incidences we could have halted. All we know is we're following a research-based, vetted protocol to ensure that we are doing everything within our power to keep our kids safe. And it's a real lengthy, arduous process. It's multidisciplinary. If you don't know this, it involves outside psychologists, behavioral specialists, it involves police officers, it involves social workers, and it's all for the purpose of making sure that if something is a viable threat, it is addressed. And then the screenings, our building is here to the right. As you can see, trending up for us this year, which is, always tough to take, especially after what we've experienced here this fall. So, okay. Now I'll just talk to you a little bit about why we believe that things are trending up in terms of or lessening behavioral issues. Our data has improved, and just things that we are trying to attack every day here. There's 3 pillars to our professional development, and I would call them 3 initiatives that we try to engage in on a daily, weekly, monthly, and for this year basis. First of all, and I think I've talked to this group before, our Every Student Known initiative, and something that we're doing at the middle level as well. Our goal is to have all 1,100 of our kids have an authentic relationship with at least one professional in this building. And it does not have to be a classroom educator. You know what I mean? I've said it before. It could be Grandma Renee in the kitchen. It could be Miss Sam taking care of the hallways during the day. It can be, Miss Fisk in the bus garage. It just has to be at least one. We need that one trusted adult that all 1,100 can go to in times of crisis, in times of adversity. We feel like that can be a way to prevent the next threat assessment. We feel like that can be the way to insulate the next suicide screening. We feel like that can be the reason a kid doesn't act out in class. And you can see how it ties directly into some of the data. It could be the reason why that child comes to school, because they've got that relationship with Mr. Fleming or Coach Russell. They've got that relationship with Mrs. Wilcox. So you can see how that directly infiltrates the data. Now, it's just not some pie in the sky initiative. We're feeding it with Dave Stewart's Moments of Genuine Connection. And we're not just saying, we hope you do it. We're asking our educators to bring to us their data that shows that they're having these moments of genuine connection with every single child on their roster. They have to bring their clipboard, their spreadsheet, whatever that shows, like, I pulled that kid and I've made that child feel valued, seen, or heard, as Dave Stewart has written about. The second initiative or pillar of our PD is we're really trying to grow pedagogically. We're trying to become masters of our vocation. And the way that we're feeding into being better teachers, so that teaching is for, in fact, learning, is 2 ways. We're doing it through teacher shadows. In other words, getting educators into other educators' rooms, because oftentimes the best PD is right down the hallway. And secondly, we're doing it through our PD sessions where we do street fairs of pedagogy. In other words, we show off the great educators we have in this building by letting them show their teammates and their colleagues the things that they're doing in their room, but rather in a street fair type setting, kind of like your every day or every Saturday. What do they call those things on Saturdays where they give vegetables, fruits, hummus? Thank you, farmers markets. And then finally, we're really trying to build a champions culture here. And in order for that to happen, we've really tried to institute more restorative practices. We know that suspension, just out of school suspension, the data shows, the research shows it doesn't work. So we're trying to do innovative things to keep kids in school more, but where learning is still occurring from their behavioral choices. And I think that feeds into some of the data you've seen here, is that the referrals are going down because maybe it's like, hey, I know Coach Duffy's going to work with me on this. He's not just going to boot me. He's going to have me, cleaning up the parking lot after school, or he's going to have me do some sort of service in the community, or he's going to have me write a reflection on things I could do better to change my best next time. Just those reflective and restorative actions that instead of booting them, and there are cases where we have to. I was jamming out with Mrs. Voskel Friday night trying to figure out a way to keep a young lady in school. Sometimes it's just not possible because you have to think about all 1,100, not just one. But in those cases where we can, we want to keep them here, and more than anything, we want them to learn from their errors. And we feel like that feeds into that data. So, our intent is really to make, this the #1 holistic school in the state of Michigan. That is our intent. And in order for that to happen, we've got to keep working on the aforementioned initiatives. We have to, and the way let me say this, you may say, well, how do you quantify that? We've got to get our grad rate up. Our grad rate's not 100%, so it's not there yet. We're not even getting 83% of our kids to school 90% of the time. How are we going to get them across the stage if they're not here learning? We've got to get our kids ready to launch. When some tall, bald guy gives them a handshake and a piece of paper on a Thursday night in late May, the next day they've got to know where they're headed or have a pretty darn good idea, right? And then finally, we've got to get them life ready. If they're not going out into the community ready to contribute, then we haven't done the job. So those are the ways we're kind of quantifying how we're going to be the #1 school, holistic school in the state for all 1,100 of our kids. So thanks for letting us share tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any questions from the table regarding any of the information or any of the content that's been shared?
I have a question about behavioral threat assessment. It's going down, it says, but I've heard that the school is very high on bullying issues and a lot of public. Is that something that would be in this chart?
A behavioral threat assessment is not necessarily bullying.
Okay.
A behavioral threat assessment is when a student makes a statement or verbalizes some type of threat, whether it be in writing or verbally, then the team assesses that.
Okay. Thank you. Perfect.
You're welcome.
Jason, I'll just add, bullying would be in those major behaviors that they talked about.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Right. Thank you. Administrators. Pleasure to have you. Moving on to our discussion items. First up, we have the general fund budget amendment 1 with Muddy. Is on for action this evening.
Okay, so I'm not going to go over the full 30 slide presentation again that we did back in earlier this month. There have been no changes to budget amendment 1, but one thing we need to discuss and potentially take action on tonight would be, we've been discussing the potential of creating a capital projects improvement fund to start planning for future capital needs down the road. Really, we have several options that we can do. June 30, 2022 was the last fiscal year that we levied a sinking fund millage. We currently have a little over $1.9 million remaining in the sinking fund. It is accruing, earning interest right now in Independent Bank, but we are not levying any additional property tax revenue on the sinking fund. So
We do have, as mentioned, several known capital projects likely coming down the road within the next 4 to 5 years. So there's multiple ways we can address these. Obviously, we can utilize that remaining $1.9 million in the sinking fund as long as it's an allowable sinking fund expense, because the state does mandate what specific types of expenditures you can use sinking fund money on. We can pay as you go, so we'll just use the general fund. If we have a large expense that year, we charge it to the general fund. But one thing to note is that, if it's the turf for the Red Hawk Stadium, that might be a $900 million hit to the general fund, and that could likely put us into a deficit for that year. We can also just do a commit funds within the general fund. So, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like on the financial statements. That would be via a board resolution. And then there's two options related to creating a new improvement funds. One is a capital improvement fund where the funds are committed by the board. And then there's a public improvement fund where those funds are restricted. So the first option related that would require a board resolution would be committing the funds within the general fund. So right now you can see we have $3.3 million of unassigned fund balance in the general fund. And that's the lowest classification, least restrictive classification for fund balance. The board could do a board resolution to commit a certain dollar amount at the end of the year, and that would be moving funds from unassigned up to committed. And that's really just the board saying within the general fund, we want to recognize that we have $400,000 of future expenditures that we want to start recognizing now. So this is kind of, that all would stay within the general fund column. Then we have the capital improvement fund or a public improvement fund. The major distinction between those two is a capital improvement fund is the board is via board resolution is committing those funds to a capital improvement fund. For the public improvement fund, the board is restricting those funds. Once those funds are moved into the public improvement fund, they can never be moved out. They have to be used for the intended purpose of that public improvement fund. So the major difference is capital improvement is moved into a new fund, but if the board were down the road were to choose, or if down the road is determined that, hey, we need these funds for a different purpose, you can move them back to the general fund via a new board resolution. Public improvement is one way. Once that money is moved, it is there forever. It has to be used for the intended purpose. So again, here is just showing it. Money would move from unassigned general fund up to the committed in a non-major governmental fund. And then for the public improvement, it moved from unassigned in the general fund to restricted in a non-major general fund. And any questions on those three options? Well, really four. Pay as you go, do a commitment within the general fund, capital improvement, or public improvement fund.
What happens to the funds that are sitting in the sinking fund if we don't push them?
They'll just continue to earn interest.
So are we earning more interest on that account compared to the general fund?
It's the same interest rates.
So what would you recommend?
My recommendation would be the capital improvement fund. That is, we are starting to plan, that kind of smooths out the expenditure, the hits on the general fund, so it's not one big hit in that fiscal year that we incur those expenses. We're starting to plan and save for it now. And then it kind of smooths out the impact on the general fund. But let's say 10 years down the road, situations change, board can then do a resolution, say, hey, you know what, we have $1 million here, we really need, we don't need $1 million, we need it really to use for the general fund. You could transfer the entire $1 million back or $500,000. But you do have that flexibility, but again, it is a formal board resolution that the board would have to take action on to transfer it back. Public improvement, that's not an option, it's staying there. So really, for the budget amendment one, I did include a $400,000 transfer from general fund to a capital improvement fund, but we can't adopt that budget until we kind of decide what action, what direction the board would like to go with these 4 options.
I think capital improvement makes sense. You explained why we would do that, so you get some flexibility. What's the advantage to doing a public improvement? If you're locking those funds in, you no longer can remove them, even if there's a dire need in the district. What's the advantage to locking those in? Why is that even an option?
That is, you know, it is locked in. It cannot be, you know, nobody can say, hey, I want that money for something else. It's, no, the board at this time has determined that we want to transfer 400,000 for a future expense. So it is locked in.
Yeah, there's no third financial treatment for that or any additional opportunities for income due to increased interest or anything. It's just a different treatment of, it basically just ties your hands to be able to use that money.
Correct. And it would be in an interest bearing account.
Same as the other one.
Yes.
To add to April's question about the sinking fund, we'll likely be spending down the majority of the sinking fund as we bring home the completion of the current projects that are on the books. So one of the things that we did not anticipate when we went to our voters in August of 2020 was a replacement of the tennis courts at the high school. And that project alone is, 1.5, roughly, we're anticipating that project to be somewhere in between 1.4 and 1.6 million dollars. We're paying for that project with savings that we've incurred over other projects, but there may also be a requirement to utilize some of the sinking fund dollars to finish that project. We're gonna have some paving that will need to be completed in the summer of 2026. And I'll talk about that a little bit tonight in another agenda item. But it'll likely be the case that we need to utilize those sinking fund dollars, which originally were earmarked for paving projects on campus, amongst other things. So we'll likely be utilizing the entirety of that sinking fund account as we wrap everything up for the projects right now on the books.
And so in board book, I have attached a draft resolution for the public improvement fund, a draft resolution for the capital improvement fund, and then if it was the direction the board wants to take, that you just commit funds within the general fund, that would be something the board can take action on in June. It just has to be done before the end of the fiscal year.
But just to clarify on that, you did say budget amendment 1 has funds set aside.
Yeah, so technically, if you would like to discuss it further, discuss it at the March meeting. There's nothing that is, there's no deadline for adopting a budget amendment. So if the board would like to discuss it further, you do not have to take action on budget amendment 1. And if it's determined, we would like to keep it as is for now, I can adjust budget amendment 1, remove that, and present it to the board without that transfer presented March 10th.
The reason I'm asking is not for action item, not for the budget amendment 1. And I guess it would make sense to me if we're accepting budget amendment 1 that we want to include an action item to accept. Capital. Yeah. Or we hold off on it for a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the thinking there was rather than rush the board into a decision, the budget amendment one is just an amendment. We can always make another amendment. And if the board decides not to set aside dollars, then Marty can rework when he does the final budget in June. We can rework those dollars back in the general fund. So this one just kind of is a set aside.
I appreciate the difference being shared, you know, what Dallas can be spent for, and I think when we look at one of them locks we down and we can't respond to emergencies in the district until another, I think it's pretty. I think it's well percent, but I think that makes sense to pursue flexibility.
I would back up even one step on that and say that, yes, we need an improvement fund. You know, it's been lacking in the district for years. It's fiscally responsible of us to have that working. So I appreciate you bringing these options to us.
What was the dollar amount again on the change? I mean, number one.
About 400,000 is what's included in there.
Oh, that from general fund then?
Yes.
And how much of that 400,000 cover the capital improvements? Like the turf?
That would not cover the full amount of the projected cost of the turf. So it'd be, you kind of fund it annually until you kind of hit that target number, or you can put a little bit more. So instead of spending $1 million in one fiscal year, it'd be, all right, let's transfer 400 this fiscal year. Let's do 300 next, 300 the following, and then you have that money in that capital improvement fund for the year 4 or 5 when you know you'll be replacing the field turf.
If we don't have enough funds and the capital improvement, we pull it out of the general fund anyway, right?
Correct.
Or we don't do the project.
So just we're talking, refreshing from what we talked about, if you have a large project coming at us and we know it's coming at us, this would be a savings vessel for us to save up year over year, knowing we've got to take a hit on redoing, and I don't want to say that, you know, football fields, we just, you know, haven't done investments there, but when you're talking about something you know has a lifespan coming at you, you can save it so it doesn't become an emergency for the district. It's basically just a savings vessel to plan to replace something years forward, right? That's what we're using for.
Correct. It smooths out, you're saving for a future. It's really no different than, or I know in 5 years I need to replace my roof. I'm gonna start saving now. So I might put it into a different bank account. So instead of paying $20,000 in 5 years, I'm putting $4,000 away each year. And then your budget doesn't kind of have a spike in your expenditures that one fiscal year.
The other thing districts can do, if they don't have the dollars in a sinking fund, they don't have an improvement fund set aside. If their general fund is very tight, they don't have a fund balance, you could go to the bank and borrow money if it's an emergency project. You'd rather not do that because then you're paying interest on those dollars that you borrow, just like as Marty said, if your roof needs replacement, you don't have those dollars in savings, then you can get a home equity or something like that, as far as a loan from the bank that you pay interest on, which you can complete the project with.
Who classifies these projects as far as capital improvements? Who makes the decision of whether they classify as a capital improvement?
So generally, it's board policy, and then in the business manual, it says, so anything over $5,000 with a useful life of 1 year would be considered like a capital project. Because at that point, we would capitalize it, and it would show up as a fixed asset in the financial statements. And the intent of this would not be, to cover big, kind of maintenance, regular maintenance expenses. That would all be included in the annual general fund budget.
Actually, a really good question. I was assuming for my work life, I brought what our definition of capital versus maintenance is. So I didn't realize it was $5,000 useful life in 1 year, classifies it to capital.
If it's over 1 year, we capitalize it. The individual unit cost or the cost of the plus install.
All the questions. Okay, on Rachel, we see where we're heading. All right, moving on to Title II, relinquishment of funds with Mike.
When I'm sitting over there, I realized I had a typo. It should say Title III. But so this is, I believe, this is new this year. I've never seen this before, but the state is now asking if you are not going to apply for all the funds that are available, they want you to, the board to take action to relinquish it. So I believe this would be our 3rd year that we have not applied for Title III funds. Generally speaking, it's about $3,000 annually. The Title III English learners. So we don't, Cedar Springs doesn't have a large student body that actually qualifies for the services these funds are restricted for. And there's a significant amount of compliance and reporting that goes along with it. So those two factors, only having a very small, if not any, students that qualify for using these funds, as well as the restrictions and reporting requirements that go along with it. For this year, it is $3,615. We've determined not to apply for them. New this year, they're asking the boards to take action. This is not on action for tonight. This would be the first read. Any questions?
What classifies it?
I would have to get back to you for the specifics related to Title III.
That'd be more English, English and second language.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a leader tester.
That's kind of assumed that all of the other boxes we apply for.
All the ones that we qualify for are qualified. Yeah, we do Title I, II, or Title I, right?
Okay, let's see that again. Moving on to elementary playground proposal and update with Scott and Mike.
So the next collection of artifacts you have in board book is really not the end of the process in terms of enhancing our elementary programs, elementary playgrounds. But it is a recommendation for the playground at Beach and the playground at Cedar View. Included in board book, the initial slide just shows you the picture of Cedar Trails, and you'll see that there are 2 playground areas shaded in tan on the southeast end of the building. So the one playground is oriented toward 1st grade, the other playground is oriented toward kindergarten. So the initial body of work that our facilities team was doing with the team at Trails was looking to replace pieces of equipment at both playgrounds. What we've kind of a revelation that came to the table in the last week and a half was the next slide down. Is there life in us combining those two playgrounds to have a better experience for our students and do so with a reduced cost in terms of the bond budget. And so what we're looking at right now is what the operations and facilities team is doing, working with the team at Trails. And the team at Trails includes administrators, teachers, special ed staff, is trying to determine a kind of a collection of features that we would include in a playground that would be more centrally located on the playground at Trails. And then what we'll do is we'll compare the options between doing two separate spaces versus doing one space. And then we'll bring forward a proposal to you that has the best return on investment in terms of fun for our students. But rather than looking at two separate spaces, we're wondering, is there some benefit in looking at one combined space at Trails? So that's the piece at Trails. The next slide down, then we talk about beach. So that's the overview, high level architectural drawing of the beach proposal. Then the next series of slides are more detailed photos or images that were provided to us from Sinclair, which is the agency that we're working with, the company that we're working with to design the playgrounds and then also to secure the equipment. So beaches overview is there, followed up by the overview for Cedar View. In each playground project, the facilities team, the Sinclair rep, has worked very closely with staff to create features, to provide features for our students that are inclusive of all students and all abilities, but also to provide some neat spaces for students to really maximize that experience when they're out there on the playground. The last sheet in the packet is the cost breakdown, what we're requesting you to consider for approval tonight. The playground project at Beach comes in at $261,062.58. The playground proposal at Cedar View comes in at $199,998.27. We anticipate the number for Cedar View, or Cedar Trails, coming in somewhere in that ballpark between $230,000 and $260,000 as far as the revamp at that space as well. The equipment is at each of these buildings is tired. Our facilities team was doing some major welding and major repair to a structure at Beach over winter break. So the challenge is that, the structures are 20 plus years old. We're not able to get the repair parts for those structures that we need anymore. The equipment at Trails, a lot of the protective rubber coating, same goes at Beach. A lot of the protective rubber coating is worn off, it's worn down, it's seen a good life use. And so, aside from stripping those pieces off, taking them out, getting them clean, prepped, and recoated, we really don't have any options as far as making those structures as safe as we could be for our students moving forward. So the idea is to, do our best to carry forward as many pieces as we can that are reasonable, that are safe for our kids moving forward. But a lot of the features really have exceeded their useful life, and therefore, they really just don't have value putting those onto one of the new playgrounds in our three buildings. And we are hoping for action this evening on the proposal for Beach and the proposal for View. We saw these numbers and the proposal back in early January. The reason for getting, these proposals approved tonight before the trailers proposal is the sooner that we get the proposals approved, the sooner we get on the list for installation. And that's critical for us if we want to deliver and be open and ready to go for the beginning of the school year.
Question?
So is this the final proposal? There's no critiquing anything on this? There's testing?
We're open. The recommendation is for this proposal.
Is those logs on beach, I believe it is? That are set kind of far off to the side? Running numbers on that, that was just for those logs and rocks, it was 18,000. Is that something that can be cut out of this budget? To save us some money since it's off to the far side when maybe kids aren't gonna go play into that area.
That's
Just something to look at. And then the other thing that I personally heard from one of my guys was the swing sets, the player swings, and I guess they fight over player swings quite a bit. Are we thinking about adding swing sets as well there?
So there are swings included at each.
Okay,
If you look in slide 8,
I'm talking View, sorry, but
Okay.
player swings, I've been trying around.
yeah,
View doesn't have any swing sets, they just have 5 player swings.
There's a whole set of swing sets that we're not removing that are out there. It's hooked right on the edge of that. Off this playground, you have a big concrete area where there's basketball hoops, and on the edge of that is the swing set of,
Okay.
8 to 12 swings, that are set up that are really good shape still. We can replace chains and seats, and continue with what we have, so.
Okay.
The reason that classroom is offset, that all those like logs and mushrooms, is actually an outdoor classroom. So the vision the principal had was it wasn't on top of the playground in case someone was teaching over here. Somebody is actually actively playing over here.
Okay. The other question I had is, I don't know what you call this, it's like a little rambling at beach, our View here. Where the, that one right there. I remember in January, you said that in Rockford, they don't play with that very often, and you were talking about removing that.
That would,
That was 13,000 for just that.
that was actually, I misspoke, there was a different piece of equipment that was concerned with safety. But that was not the equipment, the piece of equipment that, I had concern with that Rockford installed is not included in this.
and the feature that's seen in the photo, or the image is one of those inclusive features. So it's a feature that a wide variety of students could enjoy, with varying levels of, physical. ability.
All right. Okay.
Further?
Just kind of, I think we talked about it last month too, but just for everybody, these are my deal pricings, right? That's why these are not competitively bid. They're done through the state of Michigan, which gives us competitive bid.
Right, we have that on action, and we'll see where we land on it. All right, moving on to the 25-26 handbook revision for campus with Scott. This is the first reading on corrections.
So we typically take multiple months to review handbooks, recommended improvements or in changes from year to year. This collection, Amy McCarthy worked with our building level teams to get this project up and running, so that way we're not considering handbook changes in June and July, in some cases August. And so because it's such a robust collection of artifacts, we want to make sure that people have enough time to process through. A couple questions did come through from the board table. One was around the handbook at the Early Childhood Center, and the question was around the component was stricken that the Early Childhood Center does not call students down to the office to celebrate birthdays, anymore. What they do is they celebrate those birthdays just in the classroom with students. There was a follow-up question around, does the students donate pencils and an eraser for their birthday? I don't have clarity on that specific point, but that's something that I'll have for you, an answer for you, in our next meeting. The other set of questions, the other question that came from the board table was around parking. And I did respond, to the entire board, as far as the why behind the parking fee at the high school. I also included, Eddie Johns shared with us, a spreadsheet that just compares our proposed, parking fee to other parking fees in, surrounding districts. And, you'll see that our, parking fees are very reasonable. The ones that are being requested are very reasonable, relative to, neighboring districts, in what they charge. There is a component of, we do have some costs in printing or providing the stickers or the hang tags for students. And so that helps offset some of the cost of the, that helps offset some of the cost of the parking fee, but also just additional manpower, human resources to help monitor the parking. There's a little bit of an offset on that. Definitely doesn't pay for that in entirety, but as the team at the high school shared, they feel it's reasonable to have our students have some skin in the game to drive and park their car on campus. And Eddie also said that they made the change, they actually made the change last year, but it did not get caught in the handbook. And so this is really a correction from the handbook last year. Any other first glance questions?
Where does the fund go for the extra parking?
The extra parking funds?
Does it go right to the general fund?
Likely go.
I believe those funds go to this school activity fund that a high school can use for different student activities throughout the year.
Okay, so it doesn't go to actually hiring staff to monitor at all. Okay.
Also offsets the cost of the actual sticker that needs to go on the windows and citations.
How much is that? Sticker?
How much does the sticker itself cost?
Yeah, per student,
I got out of that part for 3 years, so I'm not sure.
So then, what the cost is for that sticker?
No, but I'll find out.
I have a question on Canvas Kids in the handbook. On page 4, under program, it just says before and after school services and the ages, the 4 to 12-year-olds was crossed off, and I just wanted to clarify. So I didn't see it somewhere else, I may have missed it, but I didn't see anywhere else the age requirements or limitations for Campus Kids, so I just was curious about that.
Perfect.
Others?
And again.
I got one more.
Okay.
I went on and was looking at the handbook, and I think if I was in the right place, it looks like we've got some in English and some translated, when a new handbook is approved by the board, does that, do those provisions make it to those translated copies, or do we have something to be out of date?
My understanding is that when Amy updates a handbook, she updates all of the handbooks.
I couldn't validate because I
Right, yeah.
didn't.
Not one.
I couldn't.
Not one.
So, okay, just curious, just wondering, and I was fairly confident that the revisions make that, but.
Yeah.
I didn't know how much would goes into the translation process, so I didn't know whether that was something I needed to ask you about, so I appreciate you checking.
You're very welcome. We actually use some AI to help us with translation, but then we also use staff. Our world language staff help us, our EL staff helps us. So it's a community effort.
All right, thank you for those thoughts. Moving forward. Next, we have the Kent ISD pupil count trends update, fall 2024.
So I had mentioned this in our last meeting in February. I did include the slide deck that Kevin Phillips did put together for us. It's just a point for you for knowledge. Just so you can kind of take a look at where we are compared to other districts. Kevin's slide deck really covered both fund balance, but also covered pupil accounting that the enrollments. So just a point for you for information, in case you have any questions.
Summer 2025 bond construction and project update.
Sure, thank you. So this group of artifacts really is showcasing the handful of projects that we are focused on for this summer. Sorry, I'm pulling it up as well. So the first artifact gives you an overview of Cedar View, and it just showcases some pretty substantial work being done on the south side of the building, the side of the building facing our baseball softball complex. So you'll see that a number of parking spaces are being added back there to help accommodate the needs that we have both during school for staff, but then after school for events. So it does provide us with some improved parking, improved access to our baseball softball complex for events. You'll also note that there is an addition of some parking spaces on the north side of the building or on the front side of the building. So currently there are 4 rows of parking. The new proposal, we would extend the asphalt just a little bit to the north and then add a 5th row of parking there for families to use during events. Also just some reconfiguration of some of the drives just to help improve traffic flow in and around Cedar Trails, Cedar View for both before and after school for drop off and pickup. So Cedar View is a pretty straightforward collection of projects. The next slide depicts the recommendation that we have that we're looking at for the high school parking lot. The addition of the parking currently where the hill is. I know that Trent asked last week, as we're decreasing enrollment, is this a parking needed? Part of the challenge that we face is in reconstructing the tennis courts, we're going to lose, and reconstructing the tennis courts and then creating that berm along the north edge of the parking lot, we're going to lose roughly 86 parking spaces. We need to recapture that, and so the idea was to create that new space to the west of the current main lot. Really, it does provide us with a couple of other things. There are enhancements to safety because we're bringing the student parking closer to the building. And also we're spreading the student traffic out over a larger square footage. So it alleviates some of the pressure of a lot of vehicles in a tighter location. And then we also, we know that we have events on campus in the evenings and on the weekends where this extra parking will definitely help us. So the actual add of parking spaces, I think if you look at the raw numbers, it's roughly 50 spaces that we would be adding from the current collection of spaces that we have. But then those other enhancements, creating the berm to help us be better neighbors with our families who live along 17 Mile, and then just giving us that extra room to do the enhancements that we need to make at the tennis courts, just makes that proposal come together.
No, thank you, I didn't realize we were gonna be in some spots, so that really helps.
Oh,
Being able to see it, thank you.
yeah, I mean, we've heard enough feedback from those residents that live along 17 Mile on the north end of the parking lot or playground. That you know, they would appreciate having some barrier, both visually as well as sound, from the activities in the high school plan. So that's really more of a measure of just being able to trying to do that. And help alleviate some of the stress on our families in the community. The next slide is just a slide detailing the tennis court, the recommendation for our tennis courts. You know, as you'll see, it's really 4 collections of 2 courts broken down. Each one of those boxes would be fenced in. There are some center pathways between the courts for individuals to be able to, walk down the center, the north-south vertical line. Maybe, Marty, if you can showcase that by increasing the size of the drawing. But that center line of courts that will actually have bleachers in it so that people can watch the courts both to the east and to the west of that center line. There'll be a small pavilion in the center just for some shade in the center of all 4 court areas, as well as a similar matching pavilion on the south end of the complex. Not fancy, but just something that can get people in out of the shade or get people in out of the weather in the event that is raining out there during an event. So they would all be post-tension courts, so giving us the maximum strength of the concrete. It's really what most tennis courts are made of as of today. And so, again, the project gives us a little bit more room. The overall layout of the courts has shifted a little bit to the west, but it gives us an opportunity to create those center lines for visitors, both on the far east side. There'll be a 6-foot walkway along the far east side of the courts, as well as that large space in the center, providing this viewing access to all 8 courts. We did a page turn on the projects. There were far fewer things to talk about when you're just talking about parking lots and tennis courts, compared to when you're talking about a classroom. But we did do the page turn last Thursday, making sure that we were all set with expectations. The team from GMB is in the process of finalizing the bid documents, and Tron will take them. And we're hoping to have a target bid of March 6th to get that information out to the community and our contractors, and then really get a move on the bidding process, close that out towards the end of March, so that we can get started on these projects sooner versus later.
Any questions? All right. Moving forward to discussion item G, 2025-26 school of choice resolution with Mile uses on for action this evening.
Yeah, so this is the second reading. Again, real quick, there's 3 resolutions included in this. The first one is a resolution to opt out of section 105C, the state school of choice program. The reason for that is the second resolution is a resolution to participate in the Kent ISD collaborative school of choice programs. So, and then the final resolution is opting into section 105C, which that relates to school of choice for students coming from neighboring ISDs, so coming from Montcalm or Newaygo County, outside of the Kent County ISD district. And again, this is something the board has been doing annually. It really is kind of all the schools within Kent ISD, kind of knowing kind of setting the playing field for how all the districts are operating in regards to school of choice.
Thank you. Any questions? Let's see a little bit. Okay, moving on to the added discussion item H about math.
So I did reach out to the elementary principals on this matter. I got feedback from Scott Carpenter at Trails, from Jen Cook at Beach, and from Sam Becker at Cedar View. As far as snacks go, they all reported basically the same thing. That really the teachers all do it differently. Most of the teachers, or for most of our students, they bring their own snacks to school. Some teachers have snacks donated, and or they use a snack calendar. Scott, any gap in snacks at Cedar Trails yet? As far as Beach goes, again, each teacher does it differently. Students are asked to bring something from home for a snack. Some students keep something from their school breakfast for a snack time, and teachers also welcome classroom donations. Jen did say that it's not that not always that students don't have a snack, but they don't necessarily want to eat the snack that they have to eat. If Jen did say that some teachers, if they do supply snacks, they might need some pretzels or animal crackers. At Beach, Jen also said that teachers have $300 to spend on classroom supplies, which is an extra $50 more than last year due to staff feedback. So you're not aware of any teachers or any deficit that a snack goes. And then at Cedar View, Sam, again, as with most buildings, most teachers have a bin where leftover breakfast items go. Many teachers get parent donations for students without snacks. They had 2 teachers reported that were using their own money to buy snacks, but then they stopped that practice because they found that more students began to take free snacks instead of eating the snacks that they want. So we can check with Holly to see if there's anything that we can do with food service money, but we have plenty of resources. We get donations. There are an abundance of opportunities for us to provide students with snacks. So the building principals were confident and comfortable that they will reinforce that message with their teachers. So this really shouldn't be something that the board needs to.
So the $300 that they allocated to allow to purchase supplies, wouldn't it be better for them to spend it on stuff needed for learning rather than snacks for the kids?
And we don't tell the teachers how to spend those $300. They spend those as to how they best see the needs of their classroom. What I shared at the end was we have other funding sources that we could utilize, whether it be PTO funds or donations from local vendors. So we should be able to provide snacks for our students that need them.
Should or should we come to a resolution and just see is a response to be allocated for that purpose?
So do we have a free breakfast? Do we have free lunch? Okay. And we're talking about snacks. Okay. I mean,
The public.
don't get me wrong, Yes, I realize the kids, when they're hungry, it's hard to learn. But if we offer free services, I mean, it just, why are we talking about snacks? You know, I know it was brought up at public comment, but yeah, I just, that was my mind. So,
I'm confident that we can come up with a plan that can make sure that kids have snacks.
Without burdening the teacher.
Well, I always donated snacks, and when I was a substitute, every teacher just had a cabinet. Because parents donate, just like Kleenex, just like sanitizer and snacks. There's so much in their cabinets. Mrs. Burns, Mrs. Fisher, I don't know who else I said for, but anyways, so a lot of parents donate. So I just don't think that we need to take, I don't think many teachers are taking from the $300, which is a lot more than what it was 2 or 3 years ago. Buying snacks. That was one comment. Just one public comment. I think what she was really focusing on is that these kiddos on the weekends don't have food, and that they are getting those sack lunches and bringing them home. So I
think just a reminder of some of those resources at the building level is helpful.
And I appreciate the follow-up on public comment too, and I'm glad we had it, just so we could have a conversation and have some assurances that there's not you did not identify a gap in talking to the principal, so that gives me some confidence that there's not a gap based on what we did here last week.
But the parent reported what they saw.
Yeah.
And so therefore, you know, we can be better, which is a good thing.
So if there's a gap identified, you just said you know a way to close that gap.
But I'll have a report from the board and I can see.
All right, moving on to our closed session agenda item, and I move that the board convene into closed session for the following reason. Pursuant to section 8A of the Open Meeting Act, MCL 15.268A, the board can meet in closed session to consider the dismissal, suspension, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against, or to consider a periodic personnel evaluation of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, if the named individual requests a closed hearing. Accordingly, I move that the board convene in closed session to consider a complaint brought against an employee who has requested a closed session. I would entertain a second.
okay.
Question? The vote, Vice President Schaffner,
Yes.
Secretary Slager,
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore,
Yes.
Trustee Lund,
Yes.
Trustee Patton,
Yes.
Trustee Bowser,
Yes.
President Reed, yes. The minutes show will be rolling for into closed session at 7:58. Record show that we have rolled back into the open session and 8:12. That brings us to the portion of our meeting for public comment. This is the time where we hear from the public for 3 minutes. You know, answering or solving anything here, but more than happy to listen. So do you have any takers for public comment?
We didn't have any request times.
I was reporting to Dwayne Ritter. Welcome to.
Hi, Dwayne Gritter, Kent County. It's been a few minutes since we saw the last slides here, but what brought my attention was, and I've seen a lot of these slides now, 'cause I go to a lot of different school board meetings. Rockford had a very good display of where their kids were at. There's not a school around that I know of that's boasting a 60% or 65% children reading at reading level or their grade level. Cedar Springs seems to be even worse than Rockford. And yet everybody seems to be happy about it. So I just think the parents need to be well aware that for whatever reason, your children are reading at very low levels. And the schools will compare themselves to other schools in the area and say, we're doing as good as they are, or very close to them, or whatever, and try to make it look good. But my golly, when you look at the tables, like I said, I've seen a lot of them. Nobody's boasting even near 70%. In my book, that's between a C and a D. That's how we graded ourselves when we all went to school, those of us that are 50 or above. That's not passing, not at all. And so that it really makes me wonder what's going on with all of the schools, but yours, like I say, yours even more so than Rockford. I was thinking Rockford was not doing well at all when I came here tonight to see your stuff, and it's like, it's very puzzling. So I just asked the board members, take a real good look and go back over those tables and ask yourselves what you heard tonight and what the, fancy stuff was that they used to say, oh, we're doing better here or better there. Take a look at where we're really at. I think it's sad. The enrollment here has been failing for 5 or 6 years. We're going down 15% over 5 years is enormous. Enormous. We're talking about building new tennis courts, and we're talking about making new parking lots and spending money here. I think that money needs to be directed elsewhere. The board making these approvals on spending money other than academics and reading and getting these kids up to grade level and bringing them back to school. What do you got? You don't even show 90%. There's not even kids coming here 100% of the year. Where are these kids that used to get 100%, awards for attending school every day? We don't even look for those anymore. We're happy if they're attending 90%. That's crazy. And the board here is sitting here and giving this fella here another 3-year extension. You know what we did in Rockford when our superintendent was gone and we didn't have a superintendent? We put in an interim until we could find someone that could replace him. Instead, you guys give this guy an additional 3 years with a declining enrollment and the grade level that these kids are doing in their reading. And yet we award somebody with a 3-year contract. Where in business can a person have a 15% decline over the last 5 years and get a raise? That's all I want to say.
Thank you for sharing your opinion.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
You're very welcome. It's not opinion, it's facts. You can look at the chart yourself.
Oh, got someone else.
Tim Van Wagner,
Pardon?
Tim Van Wagner. This one's about the enrollments budget. Matt, you talked about it, budget committee, what was that we had it in the fall? We had the budget meeting. But we talked about the potential growth of our enrollments if the Goshen plant was successful in Big Rapids. That was in your budget plan. I'm here to tell you it's dead in the water. So don't plan on any growth coming from the plant in Big Rapids here. That you don't remember that budget meeting in the fall?
I don't think that was not us.
Yeah, it was you. We were in the other hilltop building when we did it. We talked about potential growth coming from Big Rapids battery plant, Goshen. Anyway, I just want to know, battery plant's dead.
You've always been Jennifer here. Having no more public commenters for us, we will close public comment and move on to our action items for this evening. And first up, we have the elementary playground proposal, and I would entertain a motion. So moved.
Just to clarify, we are looking to propose beach at $261,062.58 and view at $199,998.27.
Second. Oh, thank you. All right, we have clarification. Any discussion?
And that's to keep the swing sets for trails, correct?
Pardon? Correct.
You, yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
Any discussion? I'll call for the vote. Vice President Chapman?
Yes.
Secretary Slager?
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore?
Yes.
Trustee Lund?
Yes.
Trustee Patton?
Yes.
Trustee Bowser?
Yes.
President Reed? Yes, motion carries. Then we have on for action on budget amendment 1. So I entertain a motion, when craft the rubber we talked about, or
I would move that we accept budget amendment number 1 as presented, including the 400,000 for capital improvements.
just the resolution or just the capital? Did I say that right?
So, I guess, clarification, would that need to be separate?
It would need to be a separate resolution.
So I am just moving to approve the budget amendment number 1 as presented.
Very good.
Support.
Any discussion? Having none, Vice President Schaffner?
Yes.
Secretary Slager?
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore?
Yes.
Trustee Lund?
No.
Trustee Patton?
Yes.
Trustee Bowser?
Yes.
President Reed? Yes, motion carried. That brings us to the 2025-26 Schools of Choice Resolution, and I would entertain a motion for as presented.
So moved. Support.
Any discussion? Having none, Vice President Schaffner?
Yes.
Secretary Slager?
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore?
Yes.
Trustee Lund?
Yes.
Trustee Patton?
Yes.
Trustee Bowser?
Yes.
President Reed? Yes, motion carries. Brings us to our last action item for this evening, and it's fact-finding plan regarding potential staff discipline. And I make a motion that we engage the law firm of Clarkville to perform a fact-finding due diligent review regarding potential staff discipline. Do I have a second?
A second.
Discussion, keeping in mind the protocols of closed session.
Call the vote.
Vice President Schaffner?
Yes.
Secretary Slager?
Yes.
Treasurer Gilmore?
Yes.
Trustee Lund?
No.
Trustee Patton?
Yes.
Trustee Bowser?
Yes.
President Reed? Yes, motion carries. That brings us to the communication portion of our meeting tonight. And for the Board of Education, I have no outstanding communication, things to share with you. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Smith.
I did have some feedback in regard to the public comment from last week on the books side of things. So at Trails, they are working to improve the number of take-home books that they do have available for students. Trails is the one building that has a common library. We actually, one of their specials rotations is a reading focus. And so we focus on books that during that time. But we are again continuing to try and enhance the take-home book bags and things at Trails. We do also provide some just take-home printed materials that are aligned with CKLA, curriculum, so that maybe a student's not taking home a book, but they're taking home materials that they can practice their reading. The same thing goes with the team at Beach. So their curriculum has changed with the LA, and so in the past, take-home books were sent home on a regular basis. But with CKLA, they specifically send home reading passages for the students to practice. So that way they're not just reading, books, but they're actually practicing the skills that they're learning in the classroom. But that is something that, each classroom has its own library. And as far as Jen knew, when students asked or when parents asked about being able to bring home books to read on the weekends or the evenings, that teachers are happy to let them do so. So that's Beach also has a program called Raz Kids Plus, which was purchased to help support reading at home, which is an online reading resource with a wide variety of books in reading materials that are available for our students. So Beach is taking it in a little different direction by providing some online resources in addition to access to take-home books and access to content from CKLA. As far as the protocol goes at Cedar View, Cedar View, they do allow students to bring home books that they're reading. However, they don't send the specific CKLA textbooks. The students can take books home from fashion libraries. So again, the takeaway is the perspective of the parent was that some students are not being able to access books. And I'm guessing that was based on some things that parent observed. So the principals are gonna really reinforce with teachers, hey, we wanna make sure that students have access to things that they want to read. Sometimes that means things that aren't necessarily a CKLA passage, but maybe it's a fun book with a neat picture of a bigger crane on the cover or something like that. So just reinforcing to teachers that we want to make sure everyone is unified in that knowledge. The more students are practicing their reading, the better they'll do over the long haul. And they have to be reading things of their interest. So that's what I found next time. Reading and snacks. And I'll be following up with a parent possibly tomorrow or Friday, just to share the same findings.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm planning, we have the KIASB Legislative Awards Dinner, March 19th.
Yeah, so that's an annual event. It's a neat opportunity to engage either as a team for us, but also then to hear from some of the local representatives that we have, elected officials. And, the dinner is a neat opportunity to showcase the incredible talents of the students in the NISD Culinary Arts Program. It is unbelievable. The work that they do to put into putting this event together, from designing the venue to designing table decorations. It's really a neat opportunity for those students in the culinary arts program to showcase their talents. We have some students who showcase their talents on the basketball court or on the stage or on the volleyball court. These students have an opportunity to showcase their talents, and they love serving members of the Board of Education in the county. So if you can make it, they'd love to see it. Just let me know when we get you. Yeah.
It's at NISD, it's not offsite, but yeah.
It'll be at the student. Well, at the tech center. So at where the company.
And one point is we can hold the meeting at 8:27. Thank you.